The Met Gala 2024 afterparty was in full swing when Lady Gaga, champagne flute in hand and wearing a custom Versace gown, turned to the group of music industry executives surrounding her. What she said next would ignite the biggest scandal in pop music history. Have you noticed how some new artists just recycle everything? Gaga's voice carried across the VIP section, deliberately loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I mean, I listened to some of these new hits and I think, wait, didn't I record this in 2010? Everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. Dua Lipa, seated just 3 tables away with her team, felt the color drain from her face. The Levitating singer had been riding high on her future nostalgia success, but Gaga's words cut through the celebration like a knife. What happened next shocked everyone present. Dua's longtime producer, Stuart Price, suddenly stood up from her table, his hands visibly shaking. "I can't do this anymore," he said, loud enough for the entire VIP section to hear. "Gaga's right. We need to talk about 2010. The room fell silent. Security cameras would later show Gaga's expression shifting from smug satisfaction to genuine shock. Because what Stuart Price was about to reveal would not only vindicate Gaga's accusations, it would expose a secret that would destroy Dua Lipa's career and reveal the darkest truth about how modern pop music is really made. Before we dive into this explosive revelation that changed pop music forever, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. This story will completely shatter your perception of your favorite artists. Comment below if you suspected something was off about the similarities between these two pop queens. The story begins in 2010 in a nondescript recording studio in Los Angeles. Lady Gaga was at the peak of her fame monster era, working on what would become her most ambitious album, Born This Way. Her team had brought in several producers to experiment with new sounds, including a young British producer named Stuart Price, who had previously worked with Madonna and The Killers. Gaga was exploring everything in those sessions, a former studio engineer revealed. She recorded hundreds of demos, trying out different voices, different styles. She was literally creating the blueprint for the next decade of pop music. Among those experimental sessions were a series of tracks that explored a disco-funk fusion with darker undertones, a sound that wouldn't become mainstream until years later. Gaga ultimately decided these tracks didn't fit the Born This Way aesthetic and shelved them, but she kept all the recordings, as she did with everything. She's meticulous about her archives, the engineer continued. Every demo, every alternate take, every experimental session, it's all cataloged and stored. She calls it her musical DNA vault. Stuart Price, who had signed extensive NDAs, was supposed to destroy his copies of these sessions, but he didn't. Instead, he kept them on a hard drive, telling himself they were just for reference for future projects. It was a decision that would come back to haunt everyone involved. Fast forward to 2017. Dua Lipa was a rising star, but her debut album had received mixed reviews. Critics praised her voice but called the production generic and forgettable. She needed something special for her sophomore album, something that would establish her as a unique voice in pop music. Enter Stuart Price, who by then had become one of the most sought-after producers in the industry. When Dua's team approached him for her second album, he saw an opportunity. "I had these incredible and used Gaga demos," Stuart would later confess in a leaked recording. "Sounds that were ahead of their time in 2010, but perfect for 2018. I thought, what if we just used them as inspiration?" But what started as inspiration quickly became something much more problematic. The Smoking Gun was a track Gaga had recorded called Physical Education, a disco-funk experiment with a distinctive bass line and vocal melody. When Stuart played it for Dua, her eyes lit up. "This is exactly what I've been looking for," Dua reportedly said. "Can we do something like this?" Stuart's response would seal everyone's fate. "We can do better. We can just use this." What followed was a systematic mining of Gaga's abandoned demos. Levitating borrowed its core progression from a Gaga demo called Cosmic Love. Physical was almost note for note the same as Gaga's Physical Education, just with updated production. Even the album title, Future Nostalgia, was reportedly lifted from Gaga's notes for her shelved project. But the real scandal went deeper. Stuart Price hadn't just stolen musical ideas. He had used Gaga's actual vocal stems, manipulated and hidden within Dua's tracks. If you isolate certain frequencies in Levitating, you can actually hear Gaga's vocals ghosted in the mix, a forensic audio analyst revealed. It's been pitched and processed, but it's there. They used her voice as a template and had Dua sing over it. The evidence was damning, but for years, it remained hidden. Dua Lipa's Future Nostalgia became a global phenomenon, earning Grammy nominations and spawning multiple hit singles. She was hailed as the savior of pop music, bringing back disco with a modern twist. Meanwhile, Gaga watched her abandoned experiments become someone else's success. According to sources close to her, she suspected something was off from the moment she heard "physical." She called her manager immediately, an insider revealed. She said, "This sounds exactly like my 2010 demos. Get Stuart Price on the phone." But Stuart had disappeared, claiming he was on vacation. Gaga's team began investigating, but without access to Stuart's files, they couldn't prove anything definitively. The production was just different enough to avoid obvious copyright infringement, and Gaga's unreleased demos weren't public knowledge. For 3 years, Gaga seethed in private. She would make subtle comments in interviews about artistic authenticity and the importance of creating your own sound, but never directly called out Dua. The music industry is small, and open warfare between pop stars rarely ends well for anyone. But the Met Gala 2024 changed everything. Gaga had just learned from a source that Stuart Price had been shopping around a tell-all book about his career. Worried about what he might reveal about her own creative process, she had arranged for someone to quietly obtain a copy of his manuscript. What she found in those pages enraged her. Not only had Stuart admitted to using her demos for Dua's album, but he had also portrayed Gaga as creatively wasteful for abandoning such brilliant ideas. He painted himself and Dua as heroes who had rescued great music from obscurity. That's when Gaga decided enough was enough, her insider explained. She was going to force this into the open, one way or another. Her calculated comments at the Met Gala after-party were designed to provoke a reaction, but she never expected Stuart to crack so quickly or so publicly. His sudden confession caught everyone off guard, including Dua Lipa, who appeared genuinely shocked by her producer's admission. In the chaos that followed Stuart's outburst, security footage showed Dua confronting him in the hallway outside the party. Their heated exchange was partially captured by a guest's phone. "Dua, what are you talking about? What happened in 2010? Stuart, stop pretending, Dua. You knew. You always knew. You heard those demos and you wanted them. Dua, you told me they were your ideas. You said you created those sounds. Stuart, and you believed that? Come on. You knew they were too good to be mine." The confrontation ended with Dua slapping Stuart and storming out of the venue. But the damage was done. Within hours, #Dua Lipa Stole from Gaga was trending worldwide. The next morning, Stuart Price did something unprecedented. He went on Instagram Live and confessed everything. The live stream, watched by over 2 million people before Instagram shut it down, revealed the full extent of the deception. "I want to clear my conscience," Stuart began, visibly distressed. "In 2010, I worked with Lady Gaga on demos that were never released. In 2018, I used those demos as the foundation for Dua Lipa's Future Nostalgia. Not just as inspiration. I literally used the same melodies, progressions, and in some cases, manipulated Gaga's vocals." He then played snippets of the original Gaga demos on his phone, followed by the corresponding Dua Lipa tracks. The similarities were undeniable. Even hardcore Dua fans couldn't defend what they were hearing. "Dua knew," Stuart continued. "I told her these were concepts I had been working on for years, and technically that wasn't a lie. But she heard the quality and sophistication and never questioned where it really came from. She wanted hits, and I delivered them." The live stream ended with Stuart apologizing to Gaga and announcing he was retiring from music production. But the confession opened floodgates that couldn't be closed. Within days, Gaga's legal team filed a massive lawsuit against Stuart Price, Dua Lipa, and Warner Records. The suit alleged copyright infringement, fraud, and sought damages exceeding $200 million. But more damaging than the financial implications were the technical analyses that emerged. Music production experts began dissecting every track on Future Nostalgia, finding Gaga's DNA throughout. A YouTube channel called The Producer's Chair created a viral video showing the spectral analysis of both artists' tracks, proving that Gaga's vocals were embedded in Dua's recordings. This isn't just plagiarism, the channel's host explained. This is technological vampirism. They literally used Gaga's voice as a blueprint and had Dua trace over it. It's like tracing someone else's drawing and calling it your own art. Dua Lipa's initial response was denial. Her team released a statement claiming she was shocked and betrayed by Stuart's actions and that she had no knowledge of any wrongdoing. But this defense crumbled when more evidence emerged. A former studio assistant came forward with recordings from the Future Nostalgia sessions. In one particularly damaging clip, Dua can be heard saying, "This sounds exactly like Gaga, Stuart. Are you sure this is okay?" Stuart's response, "Gaga threw these ideas away. We're giving them new life. It's recycling, not stealing." Dua, "If you say so. I just want hits." The recording proved that Dua, at minimum, had suspicions about the origins of her music but chose to ignore them. The public backlash was swift and brutal. Fans felt betrayed, not just because of the theft, but because Dua had accepted praise for her innovative sound knowing it wasn't truly hers. Radio stations began pulling Dua's music from rotation. Spotify removed Future Nostalgia from their curated playlists. The Grammy committee announced they were reviewing her nominations and wins. Brand endorsements evaporated overnight as companies distanced themselves from the scandal. But the revelations kept coming. Stuart Price, perhaps hoping to spread the blame, began revealing that this practice was widespread in the industry. He claimed that many producers kept vaults of unused demos from major artists and regularly recycled them for newer acts. "You think Dua is the only one?" Stuart said in a follow-up interview. "Half the hits on the radio are built on the bones of abandoned songs by bigger artists. I just got caught." This admission sent shockwaves through the music industry. Other artists began questioning their producers, demanding to know the true origins of their music. Several rising stars discovered that their signature sounds were actually recycled demos from established artists. For Gaga, the vindication was bittersweet. In her first public statement, she wrote, "I've always believed that art should be sacred, that creativity should be honest. What happened with my unreleased work wasn't just theft, it was a betrayal of everything music should represent. I create from my soul, and to have someone take that and pretend it's theirs is the deepest form of artistic violence." She announced that she would be releasing the original 2010 demos as an album called Physical Education, The Lost Sessions, with all proceeds going to young musicians who couldn't afford studio time. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Dua's team sought a settlement. The final agreement, while sealed, was reported to include $100 million payment to Gaga. Dua's acknowledgement that significant portions of Future Nostalgia were derived from Gaga's work. Shared writing credits for Gaga on all affected songs. Removal of Dua's Grammy wins for the album. The settlement also included a unique provision. Dua would have to record a public apology video, acknowledging the theft and crediting Gaga as the true creative force behind her biggest hits. The apology video, released on a Friday afternoon in hopes of burying it in the news cycle, showed a visibly broken Dua Lipa. "I want to apologize to Lady Gaga, to my fans, and to the music community. When I was presented with the music that became Future Nostalgia, I was so desperate for success that I didn't ask the right questions. I knew it sounded familiar. I knew it was special in a way that seemed beyond my producer's usual work, but I chose to stay silent because I wanted the hits. That was wrong. Lady Gaga is the true artist behind the sound that made me famous, and I'm deeply sorry for my part in this deception." The video was viewed over 50 million times in its first week, but rather than earning forgiveness, it only deepened public anger. Fans felt that Dua's apology focused too much on her desperation and not enough on the ethical violations. The impact on Dua's career was catastrophic. Her planned world tour was canceled due to poor ticket sales. Her next album, hastily recorded with new producers, was a commercial failure. Critics savaged it, noting that without Gaga's stolen magic, Dua's music had returned to the generic pop that had plagued her debut. Within a year, Dua Lipa had gone from pop's rising superstar to a cautionary tale. She attempted a comeback with a documentary about the scandal, trying to control the narrative, but it backfired when viewers saw it as an attempt to profit from her wrongdoing. Stuart Price faced his own reckoning. Beyond the legal consequences, he was blacklisted from the industry. His revelation about widespread demo theft triggered investigations into other producers, leading to what journalists called the Great Pop Music Reckoning of 2024. Several other high-profile cases emerged. A major DJ was caught using unreleased Beyoncé demos. A rising R&B star discovered her ballads were actually Adele's discarded songs. Multiple K-pop groups found their hits were built on Western artists' abandoned projects. The scandal fundamentally changed how the music industry operated. New regulations were implemented requiring producers to disclose the origins of all musical elements. A blockchain-based system was developed to track demo recordings and ensure proper attribution. For Lady Gaga, the scandal reaffirmed her status as pop music's true innovator. Physical education. The Lost Sessions debuted at #1 globally, with critics marveling at how ahead of their time the 2010 recordings were. These demos prove that Gaga wasn't just participating in pop culture. She was creating its future, Rolling Stone wrote. The fact that these sounds became hits a decade later, even in stolen form, demonstrates her visionary genius. Gaga used the momentum to launch the Gaga Foundation for Artistic Integrity, providing legal resources for artists who suspected their work had been stolen. She also implemented new security measures for her own creative process, including blockchain documentation of every studio session. In interviews, Gaga reflected on the experience with characteristic depth. What hurt most wasn't the theft itself, but the erasure. Dua and Stuart didn't just take my music, they took my story, my evolution, my artistic journey. Every artist's unreleased work is part of their creative autobiography. To have someone else publish your diary as their own novel is a violation that goes beyond copyright. The scandal also sparked a broader conversation about authenticity in the streaming era. Music critics noted that the pressure to release content constantly had led artists to take shortcuts, including stealing from others. The Dua Lipa scandal is symptomatic of a larger disease in pop music, wrote The Guardian. When success is measured in playlist placements and TikTok virality, the temptation to take shortcuts becomes overwhelming. But as this case proves, stolen authenticity is no authenticity at all. A year after the scandal broke, a documentary called The Sound Thief premiered at Sundance. It featured interviews with dozens of artists and producers, revealing the true extent of demo theft in the industry. Stuart Price participated, offering a chilling insight. Every major producer I know has a folder called Gold, or Vault, or something similar. It's full of unreleased demos from bigger artists. We all do it. I just got caught because I got greedy and used too much from one source. The documentary revealed that some producers had been selling the same recycled demos to multiple artists, creating a situation where several rising stars were essentially releasing versions of the same abandoned songs. The long-term impact on pop music was profound. Artists became more protective of their unreleased material, but also more likely to release it themselves rather than risk it being stolen. The concept of the demo album became popular, with major artists releasing their experimental work to claim ownership. For Dua Lipa, the road to redemption seemed impossible. Her attempts to reinvent herself fell flat because the public no longer trusted her authenticity. Every new song was scrutinized for potential theft. Her social media became a battlefield where former fans expressed their disappointment. In her final public appearance before retreating from the spotlight, Dua gave an interview to BBC where she finally seemed to grasp the full weight of her actions. I let ambition override my integrity. I heard those demos and I knew they were special in a way that couldn't be explained by Stuart's talent alone. But I wanted so desperately to be seen as an innovator, as someone who could bring something new to pop music. The irony is that by stealing someone else's innovation, I proved I had none of my own. She announced she was taking an indefinite hiatus from music to find her own voice, honestly this time. The scandal's ripple effects continued for years. Music schools added ethics courses focused on the Gaga Dua case. The Recording Academy implemented new verification processes for Grammy submissions. And a new generation of artists emerged, explicitly committed to authentic creation. Lady Gaga, ever the artist, channeled the experience into her next album, Chromatica 2, Resurrection. The lead single, Stolen Symphony, featured lyrics that cut to the heart of the matter. You can steal my sound, But you can't steal my soul / you can trace my voice. But you'll never feel whole / innovation isn't found in someone else's vault / true art comes from pain, from joy, from fault. The song became an anthem for artistic integrity, played at music schools and creative workshops worldwide. Gaga performed it at the 2025 Grammys, in a show-stopping performance that featured her singing alongside holograms of her 2010 self, visually representing how her past innovations had shaped the future. In the end, the Gaga Dua scandal became more than just a music industry controversy. It became a cultural moment that forced everyone to confront questions about authenticity, ambition, and the true cost of success. The girl who had sung about being born this way had proven that authentic artistic expression couldn't be faked, stolen, or manufactured. And the girl who had promised to levitate had crashed to earth, brought down by the weight of her own deception. As one music journalist perfectly summarized, Gaga spent 2010 creating the future. Dua spent 2020 stealing it. But the future, it turns out, always belongs to its true creator. If this explosive scandal shocked you, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more untold music industry secrets. Comment below. Do you think Dua Lipa can ever redeem herself? Or is her career truly over? And remember, in an age where everything can be copied, authenticity is the only currency that matters.